Good evening, everybody. This is at Wilderness Voice 71 coming back at you with another video. Tonight we're going to talk about Christopher Columbus, who sailed the ocean blue in 1492. We've all learned this in school, and we've learned that how he discovered the New World. Not really, but that's what we were taught. So the thing about this is really interesting is that supposedly, according to what we're told or what we were taught growing up, that he he wanted to take a new way. Thought he could reach the Indies by sailing west, and because he believed the world was round, and all that good stuff. But what we do now know is that in the area he was at, so he grew up in Genoa, in Italy. He was Italian, and then he was in Portugal, and in those seafaring towns. We do know that there were maps that predated Columbus that were of the New World. That have been there. We even have ancient Semitic maps that have the New World. And as I told you in other videos, that how I believe the Phoenicians and the Israelites had all gone to the New World. And so, but what's interesting about this with Christopher Columbus, I just want to touch on this because I think it all leads to something, is that he, and not to take away from what he did as exploration, because he made a transatlantic crossing, which prior to that, most people who took ships when they would go anywhere, because people were sailing all over the world for thousands of years, but they would always sail with land in sight, because ships took on water, and they might need more supplies, fresh water, food, those things. And to be perfectly honest with you, it'd probably be kind of scary to lose sight of land. I mean, we're land creatures, and it's like, well, can't find land. So I'm sure that there's a lot of those factors, but what he did is he went across, made a transatlantic crossing, which that in itself was a feat. But did he discover the New World? No. And what's interesting about this is that if we look at the Templar connection with Christopher Columbus, he was Knights of Christ, and that was the order after the Templar were disbanded. So they were disbanded when about a few hundred years before Christopher Columbus, and I went into those dates in another video. But anyway, but he was Knights of Christ, so that's why when you look on their sails, they've got Templar crosses on their sails, which is actually the same sign for the Knights of Christ. They're very similar. But what's interesting about this, his brother Bartholomew Columbus was a map maker and star charter. So this is a person who had been very well versed in the maps of the time and the stars, and that's what makes the trip so interesting, because probably what they did is they calculated from the stars, the position of the stars, and that you could go straight across. But I find it interesting because if that's the case, his calculations, he either miscalculated or on purpose hit the Caribbean. And that's probably something for another video down the road. But so anyway, my point is that they understood this. And how do we know this? How do we know about these new lands and that? What's interesting is that if we go to 8 years before Columbus crosses, his brother Bartholomew Columbus goes, in about 1484, goes to King Henry VIII of England, and is telling him about these new worlds, these new lands that they want to explore, and they're trying to probably get funding and all that. But he's telling about these new lands that they want to explore. Well, obviously, if you're finding a new route to the Indies have already been there, and the growing contention of the day was because of the going through the Mediterranean. All these different countries, everybody's trying to control the trade routes there, and it was dangerous. So it was, but a lot of them were trying to find so they could circumvent Africa and up around. So heading west to find a new route would be kind of not really that sensible. So, but anyway, they had to know this. So what does all this mean? So I think this is very interesting because when you look at this, we know that we have, according to the Mi'kmaq Indians and tradition, that Henry St. Clair had already been in Nova Scotia, so he was there. They had a treaty with him. That would have been known, and I think this was very interesting because I think there's a trend here. There's some reason that after Jerusalem fell, the Knights Templar immediately start gaining. So within 90 years, they're already moving towards North America. So I think Henry St. Clair hit like 1392 or first expedition 1362. They're already in North America, and it was what 1309 when the Pope disbanded them. 1492, Christopher Columbus is already going across. So we're starting to see all these expedition and voyages. And the main thing that Christopher Columbus did by making that transatlantic crossing makes it possible. Everybody else says, okay, this can be done. And now we start within 100 years of that, we start seeing the colonization of America, of the United States. And I think that's the importance of what he's done. Now, keep in mind, I think there's a lot of controversy about how natives were treated and stuff like that. And I'm not here to get into that. But what I am saying, I'm trying to go is follow the history, because I think if we follow the history, there's more there's more excitement in the truth than there is in a lot of different things that people are, well, this or that. Because when you look at this, because the main reason why, you got to keep in mind that prior, the popularity of Christopher Columbus being the discoverer of America gained popularity in the mid to late 1800s. And this had to do with lots of Italian immigration. And just like a lot of other peoples that came to our land, Italians coming into the United States, and they're coming in, a lot of them were not treated very well. And because a lot of them were, at that time, they just come out of a famine in Italy. That's why they started coming to the United States. And a lot of them were poor farmers. They didn't speak any English. And so a lot of them were looked down upon and discriminated against. And so one of the things that they started doing, because since Christopher Columbus was Italian, they associated him that they had a right to be here because he's the one who discovered America. And that became a big thing. And then it also was used to help a little bit of propaganda, because there was about 250 Sicilians in Louisiana that were rounded up. 9 of them were tried, and they were acquitted. They were found not guilty. The mayor of the town didn't like that, so he got a bunch of people together and then lynched them, and which was a crime in of itself. But so a lot of times we kind of to push down that uprising or that backlash, because you got to keep in mind, although there wasn't many Italians in Louisiana, there was a bunch in New York, and that was not cool. So that's where we see a lot of that come from. But I think this is interesting, and I think it was expedient at the time. I think it was a great narrative to fit in there, because you got to keep in mind we came out of the Revolutionary War, so that started Declaration of Independence, 1776, the Continental Congress, all that. So we're getting into we have the British take Canada away from the French, and the Treaty of Paris in 1793. You have the Louisiana Purchase, where we buy the Louisiana Territory from the French in 1804, and then you start seeing the treaty, the ceding of Florida back to the United States by Spain, because they could not protect their people and control the territory. So we ended up getting that. And then finally in 1845 we buy the Texas territory. We get that from the Spanish. So you see all these things going on. But one of the interesting things is that so there was a lot of territory rights a lot of squabbles over territory in that. So I think that the Christopher Columbus narrative kind of helped with that, because by 1845, Spain has no claim on the United States, and at one point Spain had control of Louisiana. Then we purchased that from the French. And one of the things we were afraid of, and there's some interesting theory about that, because the Lewis and Clark expedition took place in 1804, and in that expedition, there's that is believed that Thomas Jefferson ordered them to that, because there was a legend of the Caucasian Native Americans that were living here, that French fur traders had often had folklore stories about, and the type of canoes or boats they used were round boats, which were identical to the ones that were used by the Welsh. And so a lot of people thought they were Welsh settlers. But you can imagine, we had the Revolutionary War ended. We were still very contentious with Great Britain. We ended up, 8 years later in the War of 1812 with them, for some of the same reasons that we had the Revolutionary War. They were stopping our ships. They were trying to tear up our ships. They were conscripting merchant sailors into the Royal Navy, and so that caused a lot of issues. But we also had territory rights, so we were afraid that the British were going to try to claim territory. So it makes it expedient. So we get to the late 1800s, so it helps, it raises awareness for Italian Americans, and it also kind of quells any type of land claims that people may have, because we can go back, well, he discovered America and thus and so, and there you have it. Kind of puts it all in a nice box for you. But the reason why I find this very interesting in our history, because I believe that there has been the Christopher Columbus, what he did do was kind of break the seal with the transatlantic crossing to make it, that show that it is possible to do that, and we start seeing the escalation of settlement in the United States as more trips. And I believe he ended up taking 4 trips back and forth, and he was mostly in the Caribbean islands and then down into the South America, that kind of area there was where he went. But I think this kind of opens the door, and I think it's going to be a lot more that's going to make sense as we go on, because it's my belief that something happened. The Templar, when they were in Jerusalem, I believe that they found something underneath the temple. I believe they found something in that area, at least, because immediately after getting permission from the King of Jerusalem, and they were headquarters on the Mount, they start excavating the tombs, the catacombs. And then all of a sudden, I proposed this theory, what if, because a lot of people say, well, the knights, there weren't as many, and this is why they fell. But they had a lot of conscripts, they had a lot of foot soldiers. The knights were like the commanders or the commandos or whatever. They're the ones who were leading foot soldiers. But let's think about this. What if they let Jerusalem fall on purpose? What if they realized that maybe there was something better? Maybe there was some wisdom that there was another place. I don't know. We're going to explore that some more. So anyway, hey, if you like the video, please hit like, share, subscribe. As I said, I always enjoy the comments. I always get a lot of good feedback from everybody. And keep in mind, today is not so much about Bible stuff. It's not biblical. It's more some history, mixed with a little bit of theory, because I'm one of these people that, when you look at things, they have to make sense. There's a purpose for everything under heaven. There's a reason why people do what they do. And growing up as a kid, Christopher Columbus never made sense to me, because it's like, okay, he just set out and just ran into this land. Oh, here we go. But you'll find a lot of our history is kind of that way. It's a little bit whitewashed. Anyway, y'all have a great day, and thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back at you with another video.